Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Hard Things Podcast. This is your host, Blaine Burgess, and this is the day we've all been waiting for. I'm just kidding. I don't really know if you've been waiting for this or not, but I'm glad that you're listening. I've been waiting for this for a while because now every 7-episode series takes about a third of a year. So I'm doing less episodes in total, allowing me to kind of think more in between. And yeah, I think it's been working out. I don't want to speed it back up yet. I think eventually I'll get back to one episode a week, but for now, pretty good. But with all that said, this is episode 91, and it is the resurrection. So coming to the end of this little series, I think I've mentioned before, it's pretty much all inspired by The Chosen, the TV show. The Chosen is pretty much like the Book of John with a little creativity added to kind of spice things up, which I think was done very tastefully. I could see how Bible purists would not like some of the additions, but I don't think it went too far. I think it added to the stories without going too crazy. And so what I mean by that is I just kind of refreshed my memory and watched the scene. So today being about the resurrection, in the show, Jesus says, I am the resurrection, eternal life, all that jazz, depending on what Bible version you're reading. And he says that in the presence of the sisters of Lazarus. So Lazarus in the show is Jesus' friend, that they have some history and they grew up together. In the Bible, I don't think there's anything like that. So that's a little creative liberty there. But the scene I just watched, I was just reminded, Thomas at this point also, so like both Thomas and Peter had like women. So like Simon Peter in the show has his wife. We talked about that a couple episodes ago, who had a miscarriage, and that was part of the walking on water story. And basically like trumping up Peter's reasons to deny him. And the same way, Thomas had a follower of Jesus, kind of like one of Mary Magdalene's friends, this woman Rhema in the show, and she gets killed by the Roman official. So in a kind of a tragic scene. So she dies, and Jesus doesn't stop it because it's not a part of God's plan, according to the narrative of what was happening. But now, here we have Jesus' friend that he grew up with, and we're going to resurrect him. And Thomas is becoming angry. And I think this is a good addition to the Bible story because it trumps up the stakes. And I think clarifies the real message. In the Bible, sometimes I think the Bible can be a little too subtle and people don't, it's a very strange thing. It's a very strange game we play. I was thinking the other day about me being a chiropractor and in the past a personal trainer. And so people will come to you and they will say something. They have a narrative in their head about what they want. But then when faced with the sacrifices to get what they want, and also the, feelings about it, and being told yes. Like, I think a lot of us are very comfortable being told no, because then we get to be grumpy and be like, oh, I was denied, what I want, and I'm just going to be grumpy about it. And it's like a place of like victimhood where, you kind of don't have to take responsibility. The thing that we don't want is to take responsibility and then to have something kind of fall apart. It's very painful, but also necessary. I mean, it is what it is. And I think, I guess what I'm getting at is, when a person comes to a chiropractor to get better, you have to ask them first and foremost, like, hey, are you here to get better? Do you want to be healed? Kind of like Jesus did. And you have to say, are you willing to do everything you have to do? And are you willing to be held accountable to that? Because if you're not, then we can, call it off. And like, as your chiropractor, the most important thing I can do is hold you accountable to actually take the steps to get yourself better. And that's a really important thing to think about. In the same way with like personal training, someone says, I want to get stronger, I want to do this, I want to do that. But the sacrifices you have to make are many. And is that something you're really willing to do? Like, you just can't have it all. And I think that's the point of the Thomas story, or the point of the Peter story in The Chosen. That's the trumped up version. Peter had to accept that the loss of his child was a part of God's plan. And ultimately what it did was it brought Peter closer to Jesus, and it brought Eden closer as well. And it got her back in the synagogue, and they did the purification ritual. And, we go through hardships to get built up. And what do you think you're getting built up for? More hardships. But I digress. Sometimes our intentions are not fortified. And this is one way, very extreme, kind of dramatic way to ensure that the intention is fortified and it's coming from a pure place. If it's coming from a pure place and it's fortified, there is nothing that can stop what needs to happen. So speaking of what needs to happen, we're back. Jesus comes back to Bethany. Lazarus dies. He knew Lazarus was going to die, and he kind of let it happen. And that's because he needed people to see that a man could be brought back to life. And he knew that Lazarus believed enough to bring him back. And the thing about Lazarus was he died from a sickness, whereas I think the differentiator too in the story with Thomas and Rama is Rama was stabbed with a weapon in kind of a flash of unpredictableness. So in a way, like, for that Roman magistrate to be pushed aside in favor of Gaius, who was gonna be better for that city. The Roman magistrate's free will caused Rama to die in an act of violence, versus Lazarus here died of a sickness that Jesus could have easily healed. stopping the magistrate had more consequences. Bringing Lazarus back to life, it changes Lazarus' life and his family's life, but it doesn't change who rules over a city. So I think that's kind of important to note. But so the sisters are upset, but they did ultimately show faith. And that's, I think, another key to this story is showing faith, having faith even when the worst happens, staying open when the worst happens. I think it's a really hard thing to do. But in my life experience, it's really the only way to be. Like, closing off at any point is never beneficial. Like, it might benefit you in the moment so you don't have to feel something. But guess what? If you ever want to actually live again, you're going to have to feel that thing, and probably some more for the time you wasted not feeling it. So it's better to just eat the frog up front. So these people go to the tomb of Lazarus. Jesus already said, I am the resurrection. So at this point, people are kind of like, all right, well, we've healed living people. A couple people know about healing the Roman official's daughter, or in the show, I think it was actually a Jewish guy. The story kind of varies a little bit in the Chosen show, but I think there was a little girl that had died, and he brought her back to life. And then the Roman official's son was like a bastard that was really sick that Jesus then healed. So, like, again, extrapolating into a couple different storylines, but the vibe's ultimately the same. It's like these progressive miracles. So yeah, at this point, like, there's really nothing left to do except bring a person back to life in front of people, and then bring himself back to life. Those are like the two things he hadn't done yet. Everything else he had done. People had seen, not seen. So this was kind of the natural progression of it. It's a little bit like the Infinity Stones. You know, he's got the basic ones, but now he's going to get the Time Stone. And turn back time and bring this guy back to life. So he'd been in the tomb for 4 days. And yeah, like they said, like, it was starting to smell, like, you know, clearly past the point of life. And this man walks out of the tomb based on just on faith, the faith of him, the faith of the sisters, the faith of, you know, Jesus's followers, the disciples. That's some really strong faith. And regardless of if this tale is true or if it's just a story, you know, I really don't know the truth. But I do know that my faith, I allow my faith to be strong, because in the event that it is true, that's the kind of force that we need in this world. And even if it's not true, there's still a massive benefit to faith. Trying for the good outcome, even if it seems impossible. Because the only way it is possible is if you have faith. Like, that's the whole point. Whether we're talking about actually bringing a guy back to life or not. Unless you go all in. Unless you put every egg in that basket and send it, there's always going to be this banana peel sitting there waiting to slip you up. If you're not all in, there is, you can't maximize your chances. You want to maximize your chances. It'll probably never be 100%. But you just commit to the bit, you know? And I think that's what this Bible narrative is trying to do, is show, like, Jesus was committing increasingly, and the people he was interacting with were committing increasingly. And what that does is enhance the chance for miracles. So if we're going to have miracles in this lifetime, it's all of us increasing our faith together. And I think that's the message of this. Now, I do want to pause for a brief second, because I'm always about crossovers in different spiritual, religious traditions. I think all of it came from the same place. And I listened to a video yesterday. It was a really interesting video, because we in the Western Hemisphere misunderstand Hindu culture just in general. But the concept I was introduced to was the concept of yoga. Yoga being union within yourself. And then Tantra. In the West, we think that Tantra is like a sexual thing. Tantra is using external means, external technology to change your inner state. And yoga is using internal means to change your internal state. So imagine, I always think of the prisoner of war example. Imagine it's the Vietnam War, you're in the Hanoi Hilton, and you're a U.S. soldier, and you're a prisoner. So imagine if you're a Tantra practitioner and you need to be in Los Angeles, California in the sunshine to feel good. That's putting a lot of kind of responsibility on the external circumstances. Versus yoga is taking it all internal. Like, you can create Los Angeles in the sunshine inside yourself at any time, even in the Hanoi Hilton, when you're being tortured and beaten and starved. I think that's the point here. Also, is that when Jesus starts his ministry, I think he had proven through his trials in the desert, the temptation, he had proven that he had achieved like yoga. Like, he was not a Tantra practitioner. He was creating heaven inside of himself. And he was doing so to such a strong degree that he could resist all those temptations. And then he was ready to start his ministry. And the only way you can do that ministry, deal with all the doubts and the problems and the people. You have enemies, but then also your friends are also like enemies, because they don't understand you. They don't believe you. They want to see miracles before they give you faith. And yeah, so the only way to be is yoga. He had to be unified within himself to such a large degree. I mean, especially, I bring this up because then now, kind of talking about the crucifixion. So the worst things that people can do to you. I mean, even his closest people, like Peter, denied him. And the Romans, like, they kind of sentenced him to death, like, it seemed to me like a little bit flippantly. Like, you know, they were like thinking, like, what's going to make the Pharisees happy? What's going to bring peace to the region? What's going to, you know, do this, do that? But whatever, like, God's plan was for him to be crucified. So that was going to happen, and Jesus was bought in. And in a strange way, he knew he could handle it because yoga. He was unified inside. He was committed. He had faith in his Father. He knew that this darkness was a door to a greater light, allowing people to basically punish him and then resurrect himself, and so they could see the futility of the punishment, of like them being in control, or like they need external life to be a certain way. They need tantra to be a certain way for them to be happy. It's not to say that so this is another thing about tantra. So we all think of it to be sex, and it's not, although it could be. It's like a small part. But tantra is also not inherently bad. It's not that we shouldn't have external things that make us feel good inside. It just can't be our only source. Of happiness and power. Like, it has to come from inside, and then it could also come from external too. And I think that's the trouble of all of this, because when you are like, if you're like Jesus, you are kind of a master of yoga, you have that inner union, and you're in a good place to be able to spread that message. Your light is so bright that others, you know, you have to almost give others a taste of it and then show them the work that needs to be done, which is what Jesus did. But then it also puts you at a great risk, because people will just take from you instead of, like, what I've come to understand is that yoga is really not that difficult. But it is, it's a strange thing because it's very isolating. So you get all of this like wonderful feeling inside, and then all you want to do, you're like overflowing with it. You just want to share. But the moment you share, people will just try to take. And part of, I think, love that Jesus would preach is being unconditional and overflowing. And that also leaves you open to, you know, to death, which ultimately what happened. And if anything, the point of the resurrection is that you have to be open and overflowing and at risk for death. And just knowing that you'll always be resurrected, like that love is also from above, open and overflowing and unlimited. And that's where you get into like cycles. So cycles being repeating stories. And just knowing that, you know, we do have this one life that we live. Like my soul in this body has one life that I'm going to live. But if you allow it to, like, you can start again. Like, you can live like multiple stories and be resurrected and try to spread the message that Jesus was spreading. And if anything, I think that death was just it, whether it happened or not is up for debate. And I don't think it necessarily matters. Like, we can't know for sure because we can't go back and be there. But your faith just has to be strong. And with that faith, you can live. You know, you don't have to like physically die and get nailed to a cross. Like, and that's part of the, I think the whole thing, people say Jesus died so we could live. So, you know, you might have a relationship where somebody takes everything from you and kills you spiritually or kills your soul. Your physical body's still alive, but sometimes the wounds that nobody can see are worse. Just knowing and trusting that you can go there, be open and be overflowing and be drained down to zero. And if you allow it, if you just keep that love alive in your heart, like, you'll be refilled. And through that extreme example of love, you might change someone's life, whether it's the person that you're loving or the person that's witnessing it. And that's the whole point of being here on earth, is to spread that message. And the more we spread it, the less people have to repeat cycles. You don't want to repeat cycles. You want to deal with them, learn the lesson, and then go on to a new story. So that's really my message today. Don't be afraid of that, even though the old story is familiar. You know, don't be afraid of that new story being new and different, because that possibility, if you have faith that it could be greater than anything you've ever experienced before, that makes it possible for it to be true. That makes it possible for you to expand beyond anything you've ever accomplished before. And it may not be, I think people think of achievement, they think of like visibility and money and family, like you multiply kids or whatever. Like, it could just be a person, you change their mind or their heart and their chest. No one ever sees it or really knows about it. But it might be one of the greatest victories that God could want, because now that person's going to go affect lives in a positive way. So yeah, that is me tying a bow on this little excursion, I think. And whenever you feel stuck in life, I want you to ask yourself, what is actually holding you back? Are you stuck in a place because you love the people and you're limiting yourself to make them more comfortable? Are you stuck in a place because you are a Tantra practitioner and you need whatever place that is to feel good, to feel safe? Are you stuck in a place because you think there's just nowhere else for you? Or maybe you're afraid of what's out there? The devil you know is better. It doesn't really matter what is going on with you. I just know if you dig deep and find faith and then follow that little arrow inside your heart, wherever it's pointing you, you can genuinely do anything that you want to do. Just remember, other nouns, people, places, and things cannot and should not dictate your inner state. As much as you can, you must practice yoga. You must practice regulating your inner state with internal means. And that's what Jesus did. He became completely and entirely independent to the point where he could have people crucify him and he was okay. And that's how strong his faith was. And he knew it needed to happen as an example to show that tearing other people down doesn't make things better for anyone. It's only through faith and good acts, righteous deeds, that we build the world up. So, think about that. Next time you hear from me, I'll be talking about something else. Probably some King Arthur stuff, but we'll see. But until then, I appreciate you for listening, and we'll see you next time.